Right, we're going to start tonight. Oh gosh, I've got so many screens, Chewy. Just do a little dance for me while I'm doing this. By welcoming to the show one of the co-founders of Dayenu. Justine is joining us, and good evening, Justine, and welcome to the show.
Good evening. Awesome
Uh,
to be
Di-
here.
Dayenu, I think I've
Kia
got that
ora.
right again, is New Zealand Jews Against Occupation. Do you want to tell us a bit about the group and how you started up and why you started up, and we'll go from there?
Yeah, we are a group of New Zealand Jews opposed to Israeli occupation for Palestinian freedom and liberation. We started up in 2014. There was a really massive incursion on Gaza in that year, and the kind of founding story is. I'm one of the co-founders, and my best friend Abigail Allen, she's the other one, and we were in a uni class together doing Middle Eastern studies because we were just totally dumbfounded by what we were seeing, and it was sort of undoing all our childhood, some of the sort of misinformation and indoctrination we'd kind of gone through in Hebrew school, and we were like, we got to do something. So we started this little group up at uni, and sort of for 10 years, kind of squirreled away trying to do work within our community and build relationships with the Palestinian community and just be like an alternative sort of voice for Jewish people. And now, I'm really grateful that we sort of just did that for 10 years. Think is at very many times thinking, what's really the point? Like, are we,
Right.
is it, yeah, because it's always seemed like such an uphill battle. But very grateful that we have the organization, and it's growing every day, and hopefully we'll be a lot more. We're formally incorporating it, and it's going to be, a community organization and an advocacy organization, which is our aim. So stay tuned for more news from Dayenu.
Why? What is the Jewish population in New Zealand? I know it's percentage-wise, it's small, but how many? It's different, isn't it? Jews versus Israelis. So Jewish people, Israeli people live in New Zealand.
Yeah, the census does try to make a clear distinction between that, because there are, Israeli Arabs, Israeli Christians, obviously Israeli Jews. There's Jewish people in the diaspora, very different categories of people. It depends really who you ask is the answer to that question. So as long as I've been around, it was like there's 5,000 Jews. There's 5 to 7,000 Jews in New Zealand. Right. I recently looked at Stats NZ, and that number was a lot lower. So I'm going to go with 5,000. I'm not sure how accurate the last census was. I know there was like issues with the census. So let's go with 5,000 and hope that there's better censuses in the future.
I want to talk after we start this about that representation, 5,000 Jews, because it seems to me from watching what happens amongst the Jewish voting bloc in particular, internationally, America in particular, it seems that the Jewish voting bloc heavily votes left, heavily votes Democrat over there. But it sounds like some of the Jewish lobby group voices are often very much right. Now, this is a little teaser for what we're going to talk about at the end of this conversation, but I'm interested to get your thoughts on where the Jewish community sits. Is it accurate as to where we hear them in the media? Because people like yourself and people like alternative Jewish voices, we don't hear in the media. Is it the New Zealand Jewish Council? Chewy, have I got that right? Is that the ones that we hear from all the time? Yeah, we hear them all the time. So,
the media go to, and we fell into that trap as well.
Well, yeah, but I mean, we weren't talking about necessarily this issue. It was something else. So we went to a synagogue because we thought, we don't know. We went to a synagogue and we got the synagogue to tell us who they would suggest that we speak to, and it was the New Zealand Jewish Council. Yep. I was fine with that because you go to the people who you're talking about and they say talk to these people and you talk to them. It's fine. Sure. But that's something we want to talk about. So for people who are watching live and stuff, stay tuned. That will come up soon. But first of all, this is where I really want to start because it seems that there is, I kind of said this to Chewy beforehand. You know how you have kind of like a hard out and a soft out, or you have a soft launch of a product and then it launches. I don't know whether this is a hard call for ceasefire or a soft call for ceasefire by the New Zealand government. But it seems that they have finally started using those words and got alongside Australia and Canada and basically said, Israel, you got to stop. You've got to stop this BS. Let's have a look at this news story together, and we can stop it as it's going through if you want, Justine. And we will then get your feedback on the story and what it means, if anything, to the Jewish community.
New Zealand has joined with Canada and Australia in issuing a joint statement saying Israel's planned offensive into Rafah would be catastrophic and urging it not to go down that path. It's the strongest statement yet as the number of people killed in the conflict continues to climb. Here's our political editor, Jenna Lynch.
Vehicles packed to the brim with everything they have left, fleeing the final supposed safe haven in Gaza, Rafah, usually a city of 250,000. Now an estimated 1.5 million Palestinians are sheltering here. But Israel is planning a ground offensive, so they must flee back to bombed out buildings, these ruins, now perhaps safer. And with that, the New Zealand Foreign Minister says enough.
The level of inhumanity is out of all proportion now, and whether it's justified or not, the reality is we can't justify this. That's the view.
New Zealand, Australia and Canada standing together today to call for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire and urging Israel not to go into Rafah. The statement saying a military operation into Rafah would be catastrophic, devastating. We urge the Israeli government not to go down this path. There is simply nowhere else for civilians to go.
Feeling sort of powerlessness in a way, accepting the international request is that this not go a step further now.
The statement goes on, there is growing international consensus. Israel must listen to its friends and it must listen to the international community. Palestinian civilians cannot be made to pay the price of defeating Hamas.
I think that Chewy, you and I we'll get to the end of it. Chewy, you and I will give credit where credit's due, as we always have. But I am interested now that this is the point that the new government has had to get to before they finally come out to say that. It's like, we'll let Israel get to the nth degree, to 11:59 p.m. before we say stop. But once we get to the end of this, it's got 30 seconds to go, we are still going to have to say it's good that they've said stop. I mean, other countries haven't said it. Do you want to say anything to that, Justine, before we just play the last bit?
No, like 100%. Like, this is a positive development. I think we need to be able to say when there's been a positive development. There hasn't been very many. We've been watching genocide on our cell phones, and our political leaders show absolutely no spine when it comes to sort of calling it what it is. So, yeah, this is a positive development. Why this is now the line they're drawing is an interesting one, I would say. And I can talk a little bit to that. This is weeks after the ICJ said there's a probable case that, Israel's committing genocide in the area. So it's good that, Australia, Canada, and New Zealand have made this statement. I think 28,000 people have died. And so I am, at the same time, like, really frustrated that it's gotten to this point. But yeah, I'm hoping that it does mean something.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get to the end of the story and then we can have a bit of a chat about it in more detail.
But we expect that we will be listened to.
Rafah is already on edge. Israel targeted airstrikes there earlier this week. 2 hostages held by Hamas were returned, but the price, dozens were killed. Ibrahim Hassouna lost his entire family in such a violent way. He could only identify them by the scraps of clothing left.
This is now way out and has been for some time out of hand.
A conflict out of hand with no end in sight. Jenna Lynch, News Hub.
So there you go. That's the story. And as I said, look, and I know I kind of go to too little too late, but I know that's not the case, because lives will be saved should in Israel listen to a group from the outside. I don't think they will. So I see the chat going on, too little too late, weak as, yada. I actually agree with that. But what would be one step worse is the New Zealand government doing nothing now still. So it's like, it's like, I don't know, it's like getting a participation award at school. It's something better than nothing. But that word was spoken of in that document, ceasefire now, a humanitarian ceasefire now. So, what are we thinking?
Well, the government actually has been making nominal noises about a ceasefire for a while now. That said, their actions haven't matched their rhetoric, like, at all. So we're one of the few countries to get involved in that appalling military intervention in Yemen, which, we're told has nothing to do with the genocide in Gaza. Of course, the Houthi rebels are saying, no, it's everything to do with the genocide in Gaza. That's why we're doing it. And I think sometimes you just have to, take people at their word and not like I think a lot of the time when we talk about the Middle East, we don't ascribe any political intention to like to political groups in the Middle East. Like they're just terrorists and they just do terrorist things and that's what it is. It's like, no, people have politics and they act out on that just as we do. And even if you disagree with it, like please recognize that there's like a political agenda there, not just like, you know, there's like a racist element to that. But anyways, I think we're actively complicit. I think that's like the real thing that we got to sit with as like a country, and that sits with me as a New Zealander, is that we, you know, in our sort of like in joining in the US and the UK and whatever other countries were involved in that, we've actually been kind of actively complicit. So I think that there's some soul searching to do. This is certainly the strongest call for a ceasefire yet, and I just want it to be matched up with some actual action. So the Israeli ambassador is still in Wellington. Expel the ambassador. You know, there is numerous ways we can sanction Israel for you know, its total lack of respect for any international law. There's actions that we can take and we can show leadership, and we've been really like clear about that. Like New Zealand does actually have a really proud history of having an independent foreign policy. Like we didn't get involved in the war in Iraq, obviously the nuclear free stuff. Like we've taken difficult stances. We've stood up to the US, and I just think it's a real shame to not kind of to be totally in line with you know, what these countries are doing. And I think my real worry just about this Rafah situation is like, look, I mean, yeah, what we've seen up to this point is, I mean, I'm forever changed by it. And I'm sure like a lot of the people watching, you know, you can't see what we've seen. I can't even imagine experiencing it, but see what we've seen on our phones for the last 130 days and not be unchanged by it. But what would happen in Rafah would be even more catastrophic if you could even imagine it, because it really is 1.5 million people in the most tiny strip of land, nowhere to go.
Yeah.
There's, you know, already a humanitarian disaster there in terms of like no infrastructure, no food, communicable diseases spreading. So yeah, it's just, it's really just, it's unimaginable if they do go ahead with it. And the thing is, it's really good that New Zealand, Canada, and Australia have said this. The United States has not. They've basically said we don't have any red lines for Israel. So, yeah.
Did Biden come out last week and be a little bit more firm? I'll have a look at it. Chewy, you go, and I'm going to look up what Biden's latest words are.
I was going to say, one of the things that I read today is that Rafah is about the same size as Heathrow Airport. There's 1.4 million people in it at the moment. And if there's anything that is a consistent thing, is that you mix an invading army with a large civilian population. It's never a good time. I give this government credit for finally deciding to do something. I acknowledge the fact that this kicked off at a really inconvenient time in our political process. I would have liked a stronger statement earlier. I would have liked New Zealand to even follow South Africa's lead or support South Africa in some sort of way. It's great to see us with some traditional allies, Australia and Canada, with a joint statement that is obviously stronger because of that unity. I just wish it was 2 months ago. Yeah. Like it's been dreadful and continues to be dreadful because there is no guarantees that Israel is going to listen to us. Traditionally, they go their own way on everything. They have never had to bow to international pressure because the US is such a strong ally. They don't have to.
I mean, this is what like 75 years of impunity looks like. Like that's the end result, like of never ever being held accountable for your actions, because you've got like the world's like, it's like imperial hegemony on your side. But so like literally 75 years of impunity, that's what it looks like. And I don't even think Israel realizes how they look to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
You know, like that is just how far removed they are from any sense of accountability. So I really, look, no, it is a positive development, and we just need to see more of it, and we just need to see it backed up by some material action. So that's really my take. I'm a South African. I'm a Kiwi South African, Jewish Kiwi South African. Funny mix. And so I was really proud to be a South African, and I want to be proud to be I want to be proud of my New Zealand passport as well.
It's as you're talking about, with impunity. It ironically makes me think about Donald Trump. The man who's never been held accountable for anything can't understand the things that he's doing wrong. He's now being held accountable for, as an individual. And speaking of America, it seems that the latest over the last couple of days from Biden is that Israel must protect the vulnerable in Rafah. Israel must make credible efforts, is what Biden's saying, to protect the more than 1 million Palestinians sheltering in Rafah. US President Joe Biden says an Israeli offensive in Rafah should not proceed without a credible plan for ensuring the safety. So they're not
there's
making
too many words in that sentence, Pat.
Yeah, but I say they're not. I know they're not drawing a line saying absolutely not. But I was just letting people know what they actually are saying.
Yeah.
So they're saying, be careful. But I guess they're saying be careful and go for it.
Yeah, I think like the difference between our statement and that statement is like it's really like chalk and cheese. Like Biden is basically giving them the go ahead. I mean, there's absolutely no, and he knows this. He's a smart man. He's across this. There's no way to keep civilians safe. You got 1.5 million people in a place the size of Heathrow Airport. There's no way to do it. So that's why I think I actually was a bit disturbed by that statement because I think it's kind of like it's the way that it's been so like two-faced. It's like on one hand it's like we are very concerned about the casualties on the Palestinian side and we fundamentally will always support our Israeli allies and here's $14 billion. So he has been making a little bit more noise and I think that reflects also public sentiment, which is like, we've been out there every weekend, every day on the streets, and I think they are worried about the political pushback, which as they should be.
So speaking of that, Ica says doesn't really matter what Biden says. He keeps while he keeps the weapons flowing, the rhetoric is worthless. Actions speak louder than words, which I think that's kind of bouncing off the back of what you're saying, a similar sort of vibe. They're not pulling out any financially and stuff. It's been quite interesting watching comedian trolls talk to Republican Trump supporters and asking them about supporting foreign wars and angling it towards Ukraine and making the Trump supporters go, no, we shouldn't be supporting, no. And then they so should we stop funding Israel as well? And they're like, well, no, of course not. We should fund Israel. But, we shouldn't fund Ukraine. So it's been interesting watching the yardstick of a certain political sphere within America and how they're responding to that. Chewy, anything?
Yeah, look, stop funding Israel. Fund Ukraine more is definitely my position. Like if you want to fund someone, they've got their hand up. Like they absolutely do not need to send more bombs. Like why do they need to send more weapons to Israel? Gaza's run out of hospitals.
Yeah.
What else is there to hit?
And they're running out of buildings.
It's like I joke. It's so grim. It's so grim. And it's just one of those things that just, I was glad to see Winston mentioned how impotent it feels. Like to sort of go, we think you should stop, dude. And it's like standing across the room while you watch a big man beat the shit out of a small man in a bar, and you're just going, oh, I think he's had enough. Stop punching his face. He's gone limp.
And, we feel impotent. I don't like hearing from the Minister of Foreign Affairs that he feels impotent. Honestly,
Although it was interesting hearing him saying that, and I've already shut down that window, so I can't go back and have a look at it. He said something like, what's going on now, and for some time. He said something that made it feel like Winston was. I'm sure that actually was an official government policy. I think Winston's, his marbles aren't quite once they weren't square. And I think he went a bit off the cuff there. But he was saying, as our foreign minister, this has been going on like this too much for some time, I think was the line he used. I thought that was interesting to hear him say that as well. And as we've always said, credit where credit's due. People in the chat are saying too little, too late. People in the chat are saying should be earlier. We're saying should be earlier, but better than not at all that they've done it now. Not to give them a pass. We're not now going to go, oh, they're all cleared of the last couple of months because they've done it now. But as I said, the other option is not saying anything, and they have.
Yeah.
I mean, if ever there was a case, just a clear-cut case for UN peacekeepers, this is it. And it will never happen because of the veto. The veto in the Security Council will mean that peacekeepers never get deployed. Like I would be 100% be behind if this joint statement was Australia, New Zealand, and Canada commit to deploying peacekeepers with immediate effect into the Gaza for humanitarian relief, and we put blue helmets in the way of whatever Israel's got planned. That's what they're for.
Yeah.
But the UN is so hamstrung by the veto, it'll never happen.
I think, like, honestly, like, I completely agree. And, like, you know, the UN is created out of World War II because of the horrors of World War II. Because, you know, there weren't, like, all the things we talk about, like, you know, there are rules in war. You can't just, like, wantonly bomb civilians. Like, all of that came from World War II because humanity looked at that and they were like, whoa, what the fuck? You know? Am I allowed to swear?
Oh,
Fuck
100%.
No fucking swearing here.
Fuck, sorry,
no
sorry.
effing and jeffing.
All right, fuck.
This is a family channel.
Sorry about that. You know what I mean? Like, that's the history of it. All these norms, all these agreements, all this never again are we gonna like fight like that. Obviously, we want to avoid genocide, and you know, to see that be made a mockery, like to see how hollow that is. I think, you know, it's a real moment for us as like a species. I mean, I think let's say the West, well, you know, like the US, like all of us, up here in the West. I think, yeah, like, we've got there's some soul searching to do. And, you know, I think the idea of international law, UN peacekeepers, that's all awesome. Let's actually like make it work, make it actually like be consistent, because it shouldn't just be for when there's like a conflict in Africa and there's no power, you know, like, or resources or whatever you know, or our allies involved.
There is that strange irony as well about the group of people who were the most oppressed in our modern history are now the oppressors. The group of people who faced elimination, like Palestinians in Gaza, are now the ones responsible for, if they got it their way, might eliminate the citizens and civilians in Gaza. It's a bizarre thought to go from being the smallest, weakest kid on the last day of school and getting bullied by everyone to going through a growth spurt. And the first day back at school, you're the biggest bully and everyone, you know, bows to you. It's a strange sort of dynamic.
You know, I don't find it bizarre at all because when this all started, we talked to a friend of ours who's Israeli and not a Zionist, and we sort of were like, how could we do this as a people? You know, how could Israel do this? And she said, what, do you think we're different from other people? You know, yeah, people are the same. And I think if I want people to learn one lesson from this, it's that, you know, I really do believe that either you can like deepen your humanity and choose to recognize, you know, your fellow humans when you've gone through like something like that kind of trauma, or you can say, hey, I'm in it for myself, survival of the fittest. And, you know, you hear Israelis say this, like I try to understand their psychology because I don't get it. Yeah. And they'll say things like, if it's not their kids, it's my kids, and I choose my kids. Like, imagine that mindset, you know? And how about
everyone's kids? How about we look after everyone's kids?
How about just kids? We like kids. Like, you know, we love our kids. We don't want any kids to be harmed. Yeah. So, like, I really believe that. Like, I think like some people, and you know, so what? I don't think it's ironic. I actually think it makes sense in a way. I think this, and Israelis, you know, sometimes they'll talk to you about it and they'll say things like this. They were like, they looked at what happened in the Holocaust and they said, well, I don't want to be in the camp, so I need to be the God. And that's the two roles that we, you know, and that's the internalization of that horror. And like Israelis, you know, I've had articles, if you can go look up articles written about me in the Israeli press, calling me like weak and like, you know, like they actually have this loathing for Jewish people in the diaspora. And a lot of the time Holocaust survivors were mistreated because there's this like hatred of weakness. This is fascism, man.
Yeah.
Any group of people can be fascist, and this is what Jewish fascism looks like. And that's why, you know, I've been on this journey to protect the idea of diaspora Jewishness, because a lot of Jewish culture, Jewish thought, you know, like, gosh, we love writing. We're creative people. Like, there's so much to like draw from, but is totally opposed to this, and is actually like, this is not reconcilable with how I was brought up and my Jewish value, my values generally, but my Jewish values. And it's actually like, you know, people, sometimes we were at these protests and people will be like, kind of treat us like, oh, you're so amazing for being, you're so charitable, or you're such an ally. And I want to tell people, I'm here for Palestinians, but I'm actually here for me too, because this is like a grave insult to my whakapapa. This is actually like a grave insult, and I can't let it stand, you know? Like, my grandfather was he escaped Germany in the 1930s. I don't want to call him a Holocaust survivor, because he was never, like, he escaped. But he and his whole family were killed in Lithuania as well. So it was just him and his brother and sister, got on a boat, didn't know where it was going, refugees, nothing, you know, but like their clothes on their back, built a life in South Africa. They were very upset to end up in South Africa. They thought they were going to New York, ended up in South Africa. Okay, we can't get everything we want. So that's where I come into the picture, being South African. But like, his whole view of the world was totally like, you know, he, like, when they said never again, he meant it. And he meant, like, he hated racism. He was a trade unionist. He was a socialist. Like, I'm insulted. I'm insulted to have my culture and my family, like, I feel like my family's name being dragged through the mud by this disgusting fascist country. So yeah, I think that's the compulsion that kind of speaks to us, because like, we also got to save the soul of our people. So that's why we got to do what we got to do. But yeah, no, I guess what I'm saying in this long monologue is, I'm not surprised this has happened. I tried to understand it, and I do understand the road this is taken, but I hope people kind of understand there's actually a lesson for all of us in this very tragic kind of outcome of the history of the, you know, aftermath of the Shoah, the Holocaust.
Yeah. I'm intrigued now that I talked about this at the start of the conversation, we'd come back to it, about the trade unionists and where the Jewish community sits politically as well. But true, before I go there, because that's a bit of a diversion, do you want to say anything else about where we're at right now?
I just want to say and just acknowledge something that you said, which is just an absolute king hit of a word combination that they just shouldn't go together. Jewish fascism.
Yeah.
That's whoa. Yeah, look, I've said many times on this show, I'm a student of history, and I've traveled Europe. I've read about World War II and everything that led up to it, the crimes of the Nazis. I've seen the camps and all of that sort of thing, and from that, I can 100% understand, I guess, the mission statement of the IDF when Israel was formed was, no Jew is going to march into a camp again without a fight. You can't question that. That absolutely makes sense. But I think this is just a show that the longer that goes on, how seductive power can be for people. And it's like, we're not on the bottom anymore. We're on the top.
But, you know,
being on the top feels pretty good.
Yeah.
You know, though, I won't go on too long, but I will say this.
Hang on. Sorry, Justine.
Oh, yeah.
Take as long as you want, mate. I'm
Okay,
not
all
wrapping
right,
this
cool,
up.
cool,
Honestly, don't feel rushed at all. Just do what you need to do.
Okay. All right. I will. I'll go on my monologue then.
Yep.
You know, why the fuck are the Palestinians the ones who have to pay the price for the crimes of Europe? That's my question. You know, 2/3 of Jews are eliminated in the Holocaust. That's like, you know, like, when I think about that, I just like, whoa. Like, that's something that sits on me, right? 2/3 of my people are killed. And Europe is like, oh, you know what? We really can't live with you guys. Like, we just want to kill you too much. We need to give you your own country, because otherwise we're just going to kill you again and again. Like, that's so fucked up. And then these, like, people who never did anything wrong, who lived with Jews for thousands of years, you know, Jews and Palestinians were living in that land, had to pay the price for European fascism. And then, you know, and then it turns into this monster. Like, I don't know, like, it just, like, you know, Edward Said, he's, if people don't know him, like, a very, very famous Palestinian academic and an amazing writer. I mean, if you ever want to read something about, he wrote some amazing books about Palestine. But, you know, he said, like, Palestinians being the victims of victims is like an unenviable position to be in, because and I think that is the crux of it, being the victims of victims. But I think we're at the end point of that now. You know, I think, like, whatever, there's just no excuse, and there never has been. But I just don't. I really feel like, you know, to see Germany come up all pro-Israel, really pisses me off. You know, like they say they're so self-righteous about it too.
I Germany's in such a position there, though, aren't they? As like the correct move for them would be like, we've seen shit go down before because we were doing it, and we recognize this again.
Yeah.
Well, do you know what I think the correct position for them to do? Because they, you know, I think Germany is one of the most ridiculous countries on the planet right now, and I say that because there are German Jewish people. There's not a lot of them, but there are German Jewish people being cancelled by non-Jewish Germans, and they have commissioners of anti-Semitism. They're not Jewish, going around telling people you can't even imagine how ridiculous Germany is right now. But yeah, I get they're in a difficult spot. I say probably my biggest advice for Germany would be shut the fuck up and just shut the fuck up. How about that?
In a perfect world, when I think about South Africa making that case to the court, imagine if it was that 1-2 combo of South Africa going, we did apartheid and it was bad, and we see it again here. And Germany, what did you have to say? Oh, genocide is bad because you also did a big genocide and learned some lessons from that. Okay, so there you go. The guys that came up with apartheid and the guys that industrialized genocide have come together and said, hey guys, this is a bit fucked. Maybe you should stop.
I think if we actually learned the lessons from history, but that would be the case. But, you know, I think this is showing us, again, soul searching, eh?
Yeah. 100%.
I just realized, and I didn't want to be culturally inappropriate, that I was wearing a cap with pork on the front, and I thought...
Oh no! Put it back on. Put it back on. I love bacon. Yeah, I love bacon.
I didn't want to be cancelled by someone for being religiously intolerant and wearing a various cuts of pork on my head. So I apologize if anyone was offended.
I think that would be a good thing to explain to people. So I love bacon. Firstly, I want to just tell people that, so don't not bring me bacon. But I think that's another interesting thing, because you're talking to the synagogue.
Yeah.
You know, because Jews, people think when you say Jews, do you think a religious community? Do you think an ethnicity? The truth is, it's both. And you can be an atheist Jew. A lot of people they're not religious.
Hang on. Are you saying you can be an atheist Jew, or that's a question people ask?
No.
Because I always think about Jewish as the religious context and Israeli as the people from Israel.
Well, it's a bit more complicated than that, yeah. So, you can be. No, not because I understand it, and I do get this a lot, and I like explaining it to people. The truth is, it is an ethnicity. It's an ethnicity. So you can be an atheist Jew. Judaism is the religion. Jewish is the ethnicity. Israeli is a nationality. Not all Jewish people are Israeli. I'm probably the best person to talk about this. I have nothing to do with Israel. I have some family that I've never met there, and I probably will never meet them. So far removed from me. I've never been there. I'm actually banned from Israel, so I wouldn't be able to go anyways.
Well, hang on. You can't. No, hang on. You can't just skip past that. We'll come back to what you're saying, but you're banned. What? Why?
Do you guys remember when Lorde cancelled her concert in Israel in response to that letter in the spin-off?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was
me and my Palestinian friend Nadia, yeah. And we got sued.
Amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my legacy. That's my claim to fame. I do love just putting it in there and then being like, yeah, so I was banned from Israel. And people are like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, so I owe some Israeli teenagers, because they sued us for emotional damages for the outcome of the Lorde cancellation, and so technically we owe some Israeli teenagers $40,000 and so we raised that money. We raised it and we gave it to a mental health charity in Gaza, and so that's my claim to fame. Yeah,
that is. I'm so glad we paused. I'm so glad we paused, because we had to hear that story. And for people who are on the audio podcast who can't hear this, I've now got up an article that's more than 6 years old. Lorde cancels Israeli concert after pro-Palestinian campaign. New Zealand singer cites an overwhelming number of messages and letters she received as having led to her decision. The New Zealand singer-songwriter Lorde has cancelled a planned concert in Israel following an online campaign by activists opposed to the Israeli occupation of Palestine.
Well, if you look me up, you can find the stories on the suing, which is ridiculous.
You absolute champion. It's the best thing I've heard. in a long while.
People
Oh,
love
wow.
the story, right? Because the
It's
end
so
bit
good.
of like, yeah. It was not my idea. Like, I got to give the credit to Nadia. She was like, "What if we raise the money and we give it to Gaza and mental health charity?" I was like, "Stop the presses. That's the fuck.
Yeah.
Of course we're going to
That's
do
amazing.
that." Yeah.
Do you know if there was any
Credit to you
donations
both,
made
Pete.
by Lorde? Did Lorde make a donation to that?
I think I can tell the story now because it's such a long time ago. But yeah, her team.
Okay,
her
hang on. I'm gonna throw all the sheet away for the rest of the night show. Yes, go. Let's hear.
Now her team, I'm not sure if she made a personal donation, but her team reached out to us. She's quite horrified, I think, by the fact that we were targeted because they intentionally. So basically, this law firm that's like, honestly, it was all insane. But this law firm that's associated with Israeli intelligence agencies, they're known for this strategy called lawfare, where they like sue people to like basically shut them up. They previously sued like Jimmy Carter for writing a book about Palestine. Anyways, so they were the ones suing us, like real shady shit. Like some Israeli woman showed up at my house, was like, "Does Justine Sachs live here?" And I was like, anyways. But yeah, so what my point is that Lorde did contact us and say, can I help you pay this fine? And we were like, no, please don't. We don't want to give them, a cent. So yeah, she's awesome, and like credit to her. She canceled the concert. They tried to blame us. We just wrote a fucking article in the spin-off. Like, who the fuck reads that? Well, apparently Lorde, but whatever. But besides that, like, sorry to the spin-off, love your work, but it's not like the New York Times. Like, we weren't we didn't think there was anything like major. We were like, oh, we'll write a little thing in the spin-off, whatever. And then it turns into an international incident, and I'm on like my face is plastered on CNN. It was crazy.
Do you know what I love about this show? I love about this show that we have no ad break to get to, so we have to cut things short. Because we've just gone from stupid joke about a pork hat to talking about pork to talking about you being banned from Israel to talking about Lorde. And now I want to bring us back to not cut you off entirely to talking about the last thing you said was, and I'm banned from Israel. And we went, whoa, because talking about you're not Israeli, you're not associated with Israel.
Yeah.
So we can go back there now if you like.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm not. Long story short, I am a Jewish person. I'm South African, Lithuanian descent. Never been to Israel, and will not be to. Will not visit apartheid Israel. So unless it's free, Palestine is free. Israel Palestine is free. I won't be going there. But yeah. So but I'm Jewish, and I'm not particularly religious. I'm pretty unsure about the whole thing. I mean, I've done shrooms and thought I saw some kind of. Sorry. I'm just going off now on a different tangent. But I'm not particularly religious is what I'm trying to say. This is how I describe, do you believe in God? Well, I've done shrooms. Anyways, but, I'm not particularly religious, but I'm very attached to my Jewish identity. I am Jewish, and it's a culture, it's a religion, it's an ethnicity. And so it's not just a religion, and that's important because a lot of the institutions that you'll talk to when you approach the community will be a small section of the community. It's like, who speaks for Pākehā and then going to like, I don't know, City Impact Church and being like, well, these are the Pākehā represent, you know what I mean? Like, but you wouldn't know that, and I get that. But certainly, like, I would just say that, yeah, so I guess like these institutions are obviously more conservative. They're, more religious, and they tend to take a far more conservative line, but the community is a lot more diverse. And certainly, I mean, if you want to talk about the states, I mean, there's a stereotype about Jews, and like, look, I can talk playfully about it. Whatevs, I'm allowed. That we're either like communists trying to like, undermine Western civilization, or we're like controlling, like the capitalist puppeteers, like, certainly, like, if I'm gonna be one of the stereotypes, I think I definitely fall on the communist side. So I mean, look, those stereotypes aren't accurate, but I will say there's a long history of Jewish people being involved in social justice struggles, in socialist movements, in the trade union movement. That's certainly like a legacy that I really identify with, my family really identifies with. And the state of the Jewish community, the mainstream Jewish community now, does not reflect that at all.
Yeah, because I mean, that's something else this is where we were going before we got talking about your very good friend Lorde for a little while there.
Tangent.
Sorry, I call her Ella, but anyway.
Yeah, okay. is to talk about the representation within the Jewish community that you see, because what you see through your screens is a very conservative, quite religious group. I keep forgetting the name of it, but it's the Jewish Council of New Zealand, or the New Zealand
New Zealand Jewish Council, yeah.
Okay. They're the go-to people. It's like I used to sit in the News Talk ZB newsroom, and I've heard this conversation. Hey, we need a crazy Christian to make a comment. Hey, let's call Bob McCoskrie. That's what I've literally heard that conversation, right? So I know that probably in the same newsrooms, it's like, we need a Jewish perspective. Oh, the New Zealand Jewish Council, who are very conservative, who are very, very quick to label everyone anti-Semitic for being critical of Israel's defense policies. And like I said, in America, it seems to be, well, it not seems to be, it is. The stats show very clearly that the Jewish community votes heavily for the left more than the right. What is the representation within New Zealand that you see in the Jewish community? Are they more liberal lefties? Are they more conservative righties? Is it an even spread? What do you see?
I haven't seen research around particularly political identifiers, but I want to talk about sort of the attitude towards Israel, because it is a lot more divided than certainly our representatives would make it seem. Mm-hmm. So last survey that was done in 2019 showed a good 40% were critical of the occupation and things like that. Now that doesn't mean being an anti-Zionist. So I'm an anti-Zionist. I probably I would say that, yeah, we are a minority, but there's a significant contingent of Jewish people who are very critical of Israel. And the New Zealand Jewish Council sort of is this unaccountable, in many ways, really an unaccountable, and I'll say it, unelected representative body that, in historic times has not taken on this role. So it's really quite troubling, I think, for a lot of Jewish people to see the New Zealand Jewish Council, which should be advocating for New Zealand Jews, take on this role. And, there's another organization called the New Zealand Zionist Federation, okay? And they are, what it says on the label, they're there to promote Zionism in Israel and to defend Israel. That's the appropriate avenue, in my opinion, for someone like Juliet Moses to be spouting her vile incitements and racist rhetoric. I think that's the appropriate avenue. And I'm really angry about the disservice this does to Jewish people, because I just actually want to be really clear. This conflation of Jews with Israel, of anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism, it's not just offensive and wrong, and obviously it makes people quite scared to say anything because they don't want to be labeled anti-Semitic. Who wants to be labeled a bigot, right? But it actually puts a target on our back, because here we have Israel in daylight, just doing the most unimaginable, horrific, disgusting acts of really of terror and violence and genocide, yeah. And then you've got these reps being like, if you have a problem with that, you must hate Jewish people. And then what's the logical conclusion to that? Well, I do have a problem with that. And I guess where does that lead people? Kind of it leads people in a really bad direction, and I think it puts a target on my community, and I do not appreciate it. I don't appreciate it. I went to academic college. The thing about me is I'm their kid. All right, I'm their kid, and a lot of their kids are we're here and we're taking a very different line, and we're very critical, and we're anti-Zionist, and whatever it is. When I see my ex-school, because I went to academic college, which is the Jewish school in Auckland, right. They were calling out Chloe Swarbrick because she said, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free," and they're saying that endangers the kids. When I hear my ex-school bringing the safety of Jewish children and to score a political point, let's be honest about it, to score a political point, that makes me really angry, because children are being made used as political pawns to silence criticism of a nation state that's committing these unspeakable crimes. And to be honest, no nation state should be above criticism. Oh my God, where are we going? It's beyond belief. Have you, I was thinking about it, I speak to Americans. Americans love hating their country, eh? Especially liberals. It's important. We're all very critical. I can't imagine having this attitude where anything goes. You can't say anything, or you're anti-Semitic. It's an insane position, and it's putting us in danger. And it's just delusional. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it being given so much airtime. And I think a lot of it is frankly, I just think people need to like smash through this fear of anti-Semitism is real. You know, like anti-Semitism is real and it is a real problem. How the fuck am I supposed to talk about anti-Semitism when I've got these people with real important positions in my community using it as a political pawn? I don't know. You know, I'm trying to figure that out because I, you know, I feel, yeah, I don't know. I don't even know what to say about it. You know, like people always ask me this. Sorry, now I'm going on another one of my monologues, but when I go to these protests, they say, well, these protests can't be anti-Semitic because there's Jews here. And the protests aren't anti-Semitic, but I've seen anti-Semitism at the protests. And luckily I know the organizers and we shut that shit down. But there is anti-Semitism because of course there is, because you're literally saying, if, you know, like the mainstream Jewish community is saying is, if you're anti-Semitic, go there. Go be critical of Israel. Like they're saying, they're inviting them to the party. Anyways, so that's why I'm there, because I also have to be there to like advocate for my community, because I want to sit at the table, because I don't want to be just being a deluded, like, I just think this is all crumbling. You know what? Like, I think in 10 years it's going to be like, I mean, I hope so. It's hard to have hope in these times, but I do hope that this is changing, and I hope that we have more responsible community leadership.
Well,
I think when it comes to talking about hope, it's when you look at what you're doing, that is kind of echoed by some of the people that we have asked a very similar question to. You know, how do you maintain hope? How do you fight against that feeling of hopelessness and impotence that clearly Winston is feeling at this difficult time? And it's by standing up to be counted. And that can be lonely, but you need to be brave. And I think hats off to you. You are doing exactly that. So yeah, credit.
Thank you.
I was just going to say, you said before we came on that you've seen the show and you sort of know the format. So you understand when we ask you to come on for 10, 15 minutes and we talk for 50, that's sort of about of how we go. So hopefully you're okay with that. But I mean, like, I don't want to stop anything that's still flowing, but I guess it feels like we're coming towards the end of our chat for today, which we'll have more of, I hope. Is there anything you want to leave us with? Chewy asked an amazing question last week of Professor Margaret Mutu, which is, as non-Māori, how can we help what you're doing so you don't feel alone? Is there something from within the Jewish community that the allies and non-Jews can do to help what you guys are doing to feel that you're not alone? Like, what do you want to leave us with? Everyone watching, like everyone in the chat, I don't know if you can see the chat or not, Justine, but they're all just like, this is amazing. Preach, Justine, keep going. This is amazing. So is there anything you want to leave us all with? Me and Chewy are part of the audience as well. As we're wrapping up for this evening with you.
Yeah, don't be afraid of criticizing Israel. Go hard on criticizing Israel. It's not anti-Semitic, and you are doing a mitzvah, so that's a good deed in Hebrew. Anti-Semitism is real. Call it out. Listen to Jewish people of conscience, because we know that it's serious, and we part of the reason we want to stand up and be counted is because we also want to advocate for our communities. I as I said earlier, like, this is a tragedy, and I hope we take some universal lessons from it, because I really do believe that you can either I think pain and trauma, you can either deepen your humanity or turn away from it, and I think that Israel is a really good sort of example of that. I think Palestine is going to be free. I do think the arc of the universe bends towards justice, and stand up and
that phrase.
Yeah, well, that's Martin Luther King Jr., not me.
Oh, that's probably why.
No, I want to claim it. It's me. I did that. I wrote that.
Well done.
No, thank you for having me on, and love the show. This is awesome. Keep it up, and kia ora.
Well, there's already a insistence in the chat that you come back, so anytime you want to come on, you're more than welcome. If people want to find out more about your group and what you guys are doing, is the Facebook place the best place to go, or how do they connect?
Depends what generation. Like, if you're Gen Z, go to Instagram. No, I'm just joking. Yeah.
Ouch.
No, it's all good. Yeah, we got a Facebook, we got an Instagram, NZ Dayenu. Go find us on Instagram. We're gonna have a website soon, so stay tuned for that. And we also yeah, we have an email address, nzdayenu@gmail.com. I can send you all this if you want to put in notes or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah, and we're out here. We're actually having we're going to be having a Shabbat sing session for Rafa outside the US Embassy on Friday at sunset in Auckland. So, you know, we do little actions like that. Look, there's not a lot of Jews, so it's not like we can have a big protest here, but we're trying our best with the numbers that we have.
Hey, Justine, this has been amazing. It's actually, to be honest, and I'm not going to drop Chewy in it, but both me and Chewy kind of came tonight show going, oh, I feel a bit tired today. It's been a long week. And like, I'm just like, okay, this is good. This is good. We've got lots of energy. So thanks for bringing that spark into the show tonight. I'm speaking on behalf of the hundreds of people that are watching now and the thousands that will see it over the next few days. Thanks for doing what you're doing. And I always say this to people who we don't really know. Thanks for trusting us and coming on and giving us your time. You know, we could have done anything. We appreciate it. And hopefully we'll talk again super soon.
Kia ora.